Moikka, Oh my gosh, I have never introduced the podcast in English. I don't know what I can say to start. In Portuguese, I know very well, but...
I can start by saying you are the most handsome podcaster I've ever met.
Maybe the only one.
That's right.
The only one.
Moikka, moi! Finalmente, depois de um longo período de espera, o podcast Papo de Professor estava em férias. Nós voltamos com o podcast Papo de Professor número 11. E esse podcast está muito especial. É um podcast sobre internacionalização da educação e é o nosso primeiro podcast gravado em inglês. Como convidados desse podcast para a nossa conversa tão gostosa que você já está acostumado, nós temos o professor Brian Joyce, que ele é Senior Lecturer, e também a Marit Viscari, que ela é Global Education Manager na Hank University of Applied Sciences. Mas não é só gringo nesse podcast, nós também temos a participação do professor Luiz Domingues, que vocês já conhecem de outros podcasts Papo de Professor, e eu, professor Damione Damito. Essa gravação foi feita ainda na Finlândia, durante o Seminário de Pesquisa Internacional Brasil-Finlândia, e nós temos muitas informações interessantíssimas para falar para você sobre a importância da internacionalização da educação e também um pouco sobre a experiência da Finlândia, como que a Finlândia tem feito para realizar cada vez mais a sua internacionalização. Você não pode perder, afie o seu inglês, vamos desenferrujar o inglês, porque em breve nós teremos mais podcasts Papo de Professor com participações internacionais. Então, muito obrigado pela sua audiência, muito obrigado por acompanhar. Se você ainda não está seguindo o feed do Papo de Professor, entra no nosso site, clica nos links, nos botões que nós temos espalhados pelo site, para que você não perca nenhum episódio de Papo de Professor. Você está pronto? Vamos lá! Moikka, moi! Welcome to Papo de Professor podcast. Today we have very special guests here to talk a little bit more about internationalization of education. So I'd like to introduce you Mr. Brian Joyce. Brian Joyce is Senior Lecturer at HANC, the Hank University of Applied Science in the Hämeenlinna city. Welcome, Brian. Thank you for this time here.
Thank you, Damione. Yes, I'm Brian Joyce, and I live in Finland. I've been here since 1981, and I am British, originate from Peterborough in England, and now I'm teaching in the School of Professional Teacher Education unit and having a wonderful time with the Brazilian cohort, and looking forward to going to Brazil next week.
Good. How is your expectation to come there? What part of Brazil you go?
Yes, I think you're joking now, aren't you? Because it's in summer in Finland, it's like winter in Brazil.
Yes.
That's true.
Yes. Yeah, it's Recife, so it should be around 25 degrees even in the winter, which is like our Finnish summer.
Okay, so it's comfortable weather there.
Very, I'm looking forward to it.
I would like to introduce to you the Professor Luiz Domingues. Luiz is professor from Brazil. Is my love. No.
No, please.
Introduce you the Professor Luiz Domingues. Luiz Domingues is professor at the Federal Institute in Brazil. He is with me here in Finland. He studied about the Finnish educational system and some educational theories. So thank you, Luis, for coming here.
It's a pleasure to be here with my Finnish friends, Marit and Brian, and also with Damione Damito. Thank you very much for the invitation, and it's a big pleasure to be here and share some of our experience here in Finland.
We have as well the Global Education Manager from HANC, Marit Viscari. So thank you, Marit. It's a pleasure to have this time with you.
Thank you very much, Damione. Pleasure to be here. I am Marit, and my responsibility here is basically making as many international connections between Häme University of Applied Sciences and our international partners. I'm also a former international student myself. I've lived abroad for 16 years. And so this topic is very dear to me. A pleasure to be here.
Good. So has Martin introduced you our subject today is about the internationalization of education. So I'm here with big players in this subject. So I would like to share with you that are listening a little more about these topics. So I would like to know, to start this talk, what do you think, Luis, about to internationalize our education, the Brazilian education?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I believe that it is very important in the world we live today, which is we say we play globally. So I think the education should not be different. So we should do not save efforts to make internationalization. So we would give our students a chance to see different cultures and learn different experience in different countries, and also they're very interesting to share experiences. I think the sharing experience with different countries, it is very important.
Have you seen some initiatives to internationalize our education?
I think actually we have seen this program. We are participating here in Finland, which is the second group, VET, Teachers for the Future. It is a program that shows the government is worried about the internationalization of education. So there are other initiatives. As a program, a big program we see in Brazil, we called Ciência Sem Fronteiras, which is science with no boundaries. And in the last 5 years has sent 100,000 students and teachers abroad to many different countries as a part of this program.
Include Finland.
Even Finland, Canada, South Korea, United States, France, or many different countries. So there are many programs that has been going on in Brazil. And like Marit said, I myself was an exchange student for 2 years in different years in a different country in the United States. And to me, it was one of the greatest experience I had. So I think this experience, everyone that should have, because it really changes our life. It's not only learn in schools, but you learn a lot outside of the schools, living in a different country.
And Marit, about this culture of internationalization, how is the position of Finland about it? It's always made part of the Finnish history, the internationalization of education.
Yes, Finland is a very small country. We have 5.3 million people, and we cannot afford not to become global and international. I left Finland in the early 1990s, and it was a quite different country even at that time. And a lot happened in 16 years. When I returned back to Finland, I never could imagine that I would have for example, work in a position like this. I see many different countries in many different stages of internationalization in my job currently, and I think Finland has opened up quite a lot in the past 20 years, and Brian always talks about how the language skills of Finnish people have improved, and language and communication, of course, is one very important aspect of this development. You have to be able to communicate with people from other countries. And we see studies saying that Finns are very capable of speaking English, and I think that is definitely showing in the Finnish context and internationalization at the moment. Or what do you think, Brian?
Yes, I agree. There's been a tremendous change, and Louise talked about the initiatives from the ministries in Brazil to internationalize, and I think Brazil is very aware of the need to send people abroad on different courses. But what Finland did was to bring, for example, the English language to its home ground and where English has actually become a second language. So, as Marit said, the change was very dramatic. I came in 1981, and I came as a communications trainer in English, and I was training in companies. And we were not, me and my teachers, we were not teaching traditional English grammar. The companies were buying courses from us in the private sector to transfer their competences, communicative competences, through English. So the ability to handle meetings, negotiations, presentations, and small talk, so that they could do business abroad. Now, that was in the 80s and in the 90s. The funny thing is that the need for this language training does not exist anymore in Finland, because the new generations have come through where they have learned 11 or 12 years of English at school. They have television with no dubbing. There is text, so they hear English at a very early age. There is social media, a lot of music in English, cartoons in English. So 6-year-old, 7-year-old children are speaking English very, very well, and they are learning informally and non-formally.
You are already working in this context of internationalization education several years, I think so, as you said, actually. And you had taught several nationalities, different nationalities.
Yes,
okay?
That's right.
So what is the status from Brazil? What country could you compare to the status quo of Brazil?
It's very difficult to say, because my exposure to Brazil is limited to you on Vet Teachers for the Future. And those of you I've met, and there's about 30 of you, you are extremely competent in your subject, and you're competent enough to learn in English. And most of you, when you go back, could actually teach in English. And I don't think that you represent everybody in Brazil, but it's quite obvious that there's a large cohort of teachers in Brazil who are very well developed in language. We have experience here with the Kazakhs, for example. We've had a group from Kazakhstan, and they are on a similar path to you. What they have done is to introduce team teaching in schools, where they take visiting teachers for a year or two from other countries, and they teach in English alongside the Kazakh teachers, so that they are learning English in context.
Okay.
That means that in Kazakhstan, for example, they have decided to run courses in English, and at secondary school and in universities. And this is what they did in Finland a few years ago, international degree programs, which means the teachers, the Finnish teachers, need to have the ability to teach in English to Finnish students and to foreign students. So there is a process to get there.
I suppose that the first step to internalization, our education, is develop our English skill, because it's very important, is right?
With the availability of courses in English in Brazil, you can attract people from other countries to come to your context. So, for example, for exchange programs and so on. Portuguese is a language more spoken in the world than Finnish, but basically what Finland had to do was to develop programs in English in order to attract foreign talent to Finland. And so in that case, it is quite important.
What is the benefits of to start to teach in English in our country? We are in a, as you said, a big country. We have about 200,000 people that speak Portuguese. So why it's important to us internationalization our education?
Well, I think in the global market, English is the language of the workplace if you want to operate in a global context. So the more speakers you have, the more people you have to communicate with the rest of the world, the wider opportunities your country will have. This involves professional development or research, exchange programs, other mobility programs, and all kinds of strategic collaboration between universities or institutions. So if you have the ability to link with foreign institutions and organizations, then I think you are well on the way.
About you, Professor Luis, do you think we are close from this objective?
I think we are on the way. I'm not sure. I wouldn't say that we are close because we are such a big country. Brazil, like you said, 200 million inhabitants, and the education it's getting better. So I think we are on the way, but we still have a lot of work to do. But since the government is making such a huge effort to send students to different countries, I think once these students they return to Brazil, they kind of they contagiate or they stimulate other friends to have the same experience. So I think the change is not it won't happen as fast as in Finland because it's such a huge country and it's so different situations we can face in Brazil. If you go to a school in São Paulo and if you go to a school in the Amazon region, they are totally different. So to get this internationalization all over the country, it maybe take a long time, but we are on the way. I think we may be able to get there. And just to add a comment, like Marit was saying, I think the benefits for those who can speak, especially about when internationalization occurs, and they may be able to speak in English, it becomes easier to communicate, and also the integration between if you are applying for a job. If we see in Brazil in my field of work like agronomy, the main companies they are not Brazilians. So if you know English, you have a higher chance to work for these companies. And also not that, if you want to become an entrepreneur and you want to run a business in other countries, if you know English, that would become much easier.
If I may comment on that I think Finland has something to learn from Brazil in accommodating various cultures into the society. Finland doesn't have that much experience in real integration of people, of foreigners into our society. We only have experiences from the past, I would say, 30 years, and to integrate foreigners into the workplace, as Luis was referring to, it's still not functioning very well in Finland. We have multinational companies, of course, they accommodate people from many different countries, but Finland has most companies are small and medium-sized companies, and out of that, most are even small companies. It is quite difficult for a foreigner to find a job in Finnish small companies, even nowadays. It's getting better because of all these efforts, but still, I think we have a lot to learn also from Brazil.
What is the most common challenges found when a country decides internationalize your education? What is the main challenges they face?
I think that there are different levels to internationalize. If you're talking about our university here, HAMK, when they talk about internationalization, they have a strategy. And for some people, they think it could be that some texts are in English and some people travel abroad. And for others, it goes a lot deeper, that there are courses in English and the curricula are built specifically to include internationalization and multiculturalism, which means that the students on the course come from different cultures including Finnish students. And I guess that the ideal balance would be if you have a cohort of 50 students coming in to one degree program in 1 year, it would be maybe 50% Finns and 50% from other cultures, because the internationalization is not just going out, it's also the internationalization within the institute for Finnish students. It's a benefit for the Finnish students, and it's also a benefit for the foreign students too. And within that scenario, as the others have mentioned, you then open up the possibility for partnerships around the world and mobility of students and mobility for lecturers. As an example, Fernando from the first Vet Teachers for the Future group, his immediate dream when finishing in Finland was to set up the possibility of his students coming to Humk for 2 weeks, maybe with a teacher, so that they can work on projects here, which means that he must assume that the students, his students, are able to manage an English-speaking environment in Finland.
About the curriculum, what is important to consider when we will build an international curriculum, international course, or English course? What is the main difference?
I think that there are the normal things, like, for example, if the degree program is called International Business, then you would specialize maybe on the German markets, the Chinese markets, the facts, the know-how, and the cultural aspects. But if you go deeper and you look at the competences and values, then they grow from the first year to the second year and the third year of the degree program. So the students listen to others, the differences. They become more open. They become more curious. They learn to adapt to other people's opinions and prejudices as well, and understand how they are, how prejudiced or stereotyped they are, and through the process of meeting they change. Marit, what do you think?
Yes, and I would add to that in the context of universities of applied sciences, where, for example, in the International Business Degree Program, they do studies in projects, in company projects. So the linking between educational institutions and companies who have international operations adds another level to the understanding of internationalization for the student and also for the company, because the foreign talent that comes to Finland is very valuable to us. And as you asked earlier, what are some of the challenges for internationalization? I would also bring in money. It's quite expensive to make links between universities from different parts of the world. If you think that it has taken 15 years for Humk to make agreements to build relationships with about 120 partners around the world, it cannot be very cheap. It requires some funding from the government, or in our case from EU and EU programs.
And I think I would like to add also one challenge is to have teachers that may teach in a second language, which I think it's not an easy thing to do, because to become more fluently in a second language, and in English, for example, and you teach a subject that you have been teaching for many years in your nature or mother language, and so to have teachers that are able to teach in English and they are confident in teaching it, I think that's one of big challenge, because it requires the institution support for doing that. Not only the wish to do it, I think the support that the institution does, it's very important. Also giving feedback to the teachers that they are able to teach and train also them to do so. What do you think, Brian?
Yes, Louise, you're 150% right.
Thank you.
If that's
Almost
right.
Almost 200. I wish it was 200, but that's okay. I'm happy with that.
Maybe next time. But I was part of a project in our university here at HAMC where I was asked to observe teachers teaching in English and to give them feedback for further training. And the job was to look at their basic structures of the mechanics of their English, then the English of their subjects, and then the pedagogy, the English they needed to interact with the students. And what I noticed was very interesting, and I think this is a phenomenon probably in Brazil as well, is that the students spoke better English than the teachers. It's a generational gap, like using social networking. Young people use it. The older people, they have a different generation of technologies. So I told the teachers that they needed to change their methodology rather than lecture, because if you lecture all the time, like they did in Finnish, they would be dependent on language, speaking all the time, and because English was very weak, then it would become a problem. So many of them switched to projects and group work and teamwork. So they took themselves out of the scenario and allowed the students to perform in English as they could with tasks that had been prepared beforehand. And then the teacher could come in and give feedback. Now, the interesting thing was, with some of the teachers, they said that the learning outcomes were as good having taught in English as they had been teaching in Finnish. The learning outcomes were as good. But they achieved that by changing the methods of teaching. And I think that this is something important to be remembered in Brazil. If people have the courage to teach in English, they must shift the responsibility from teacher talk to a student-centered approach.
And just to finish this conversation, if the listeners that are listening are responsible for and some institution and desire to start this process of internalization, so what is the steps? What do you think about it? Let's build it now together. I surprise you. I think so.
Okay.
So let's try make some scratch or something like that.
Okay. I'll be the first idiot to come up with a proposal. And I think that if you have a human resources organization in your institute who is spending time understanding the competences of its staff, I think the first thing to do is to map out the communication or language competences of staff.
Okay.
And by using a scale, like we use here, the European framework, and to find out their level, which defines what they can do in English. So to map that out, and then that's the first step, and then move on from there, knowing what your staff can do.
I would add to that in big institutions like in HAMC, which in Finnish scale we are a good size institution. One other thing that could be mapped out is the experiences that your staff and teachers have had with other countries. Where have they lived, if they have lived abroad? What are the experiences and the countries that, for example, easily in universities of applied sciences, at least you find people who have worked in global companies and have experiences in doing business with other countries. That's a valuable resource as well, and that way you can map out the language skills and the other international competencies and start from there.
Yes.
I would like to add also one experience I heard here in Finland, which I think it's really interesting. They have the teacher said that she gives showers in English, which are some classes that are taught totally in English, because I think one of the...
But you mean to national course? For instance, to Brazilian course or to Brazilian students?
Yes.
A Brazilian teacher teaching in English?
In English. For example, there's a biology teacher, one of his classes during the whole semester, 1 or 2 classes, he teaches totally in English. The math teacher, one of his classes also he can decide one of them and teach in English, because I think one of the biggest challenge we have in Brazil, we are afraid to speak in English, because we study English for like more than 9 years. And once we are exposed to speak, we think we don't know, but we do know. And this shower in English experience, I think we are becoming less afraid of speaking. So it's kind of stimulate our students to speak English. That's one point.
Okay. Have more points?
Yes, I think your observations are very good. And also we have to remember that when you went to the upper secondary school, Kaurela, and you witnessed phenomenon-based learning and you heard the students talking about that and their English was really very good, that didn't happen in that year. They started learning English at a very early age. So you also need to go to primary school and understand what the language learning process is there. And they should be ready to operate in English by the time they reach upper secondary school, vocational school and university. You can't start in upper secondary school vocational. It's got to happen before that.
One other step that could be taken is the internal structures and strategies of the educational institution and the support that the management and leadership can give to the cause, the internationalization aspect, because only then it can happen if they make a commitment and also reserve some financial resources and restructure the operations so that it is easier to internationalize in many different ways.
Okay, so it's of course have a lot of more steps. Yes, it's a complex subject. It's not so simple, but I'm happy to can provide for you that are listening us some ideas. What about you could do to internationalize your education, to turn your education more internalized. So please continue this conversation in the comments. So leave your comment in this post. If you say what do you think about it, what is the situation of your country, let us know what country you live and how are your education. I would like to thank you all for this very interesting conversation. I hope to see you again in this podcast, this virtual room. You would like to add something more or tell something?
No, thank you very much, Damione, for giving me the opportunity to tell you my ideas, and I hope that the listeners will find this interesting and leave comments so that we can check them later.
Okay.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Perhaps in the future we can look at the listeners' comments and also have a discussion about that here and online.
Yes, thank you, Marit.
And I would like to thank for the invitation to participate. And I would like to add also that I strongly believe that internationalization is a way of developing the education. Because it's a way of sharing knowledge. Well, because language is a very strong barrier, and I think we should not save efforts in order to put all these tips that was discussed here or something that was discussed. So we should not be afraid of trying, which I think it's some good experience that we are having here, that Finland believed in the past, and today they are like harvesting the fruits. So I think some Brazil and some other countries may learn a lot from this experience.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
So thank you, listen. I am Professor Damiani, and would like to leave you a phrase to your self-reflection is...
Yes, we can.
Or maybe less is more.
Yeah.
Less is more.